Hello, and welcome to When Docs Talk. So excited to be here with you all today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are When Docs Talk, or WDT. We are a collaborative of emergency and acute care doctors and practitioners dedicated to bringing you information, sharing our experiences and expertise, and learning from you, our viewers, which we really have since we started this. We also love our nurses and always phone a friend who's an RN. So you're going to see that they're joining us today. We're based here in Atlanta. Shout out to the ATL, but we hail from all over the United States, actually, in the world. What we do is we like to bring light to a number of issues, from health and wellness to social and political issues, but from a doctor or healthcare provider's point of view. If you're joining us for the first time, I want you to also know that we are on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So please like, share, and subscribe. And let me introduce myself to you. I am Adidiung Ipe Apo. You can call me Dr. Didi. You can call me Dr. Adidiung, whatever works. I am a board certified emergency medicine physician, also board certified in internal medicine, but mainly practicing in the emergency department. Born and raised in Miami, Florida. Shout out to MIA. Of Nigerian parentage, Naija represent, and proud wife, mother, sister, and daughter. So happy to be here. So I want to let you know that we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic today. We want to talk about flirtation, sexual dynamics, and sexual misconduct in the workplace. But before we do that, I want to bring out the rest of our host. We have a lot to say about this subject because, believe me, between all of us and our work settings, we have seen it all. But tell us who you are, ladies.
Hey, my name is Morgan. I am an emergency room nurse here in Atlanta, Georgia, but I hail from Brooklyn, New York. I'm super excited about this show today. Please throw up your questions and your comments. We would love to hear from you.
And
hey everyone. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, Yuli.
I'm Dr. Yuli Harrison Lloyd. I hail from New Orleans, Louisiana. Got some roots in Arkansas as well. Navy brat. Shout out to the military. Gotta love it. I am a family medicine physician working exclusively in an urgent care emergency setting. I am a mother to 1.5. Someone's baking in here right now.
Yes.
And
congrats to her.
And I have a wonderful husband, Justin. Looking forward to this conversation. It should be interesting.
Okay.
All right. Hi.
Well, I guess nobody wants me to talk.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Everyone just wants to jump in there. We really want you to know who we are. We're just like loving to introduce ourselves.
Well, go ahead, Ms.
Davida, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Davida Pete. I am an ER nurse traveling. You know, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee originally. I live in Atlanta. I've been here for the last 11 years. So this is my new home. I'm excited for today's show. I hope you are too. Happy to be here.
Yay. So finally, I am Dr. Sonia Pinson, and I was born and raised in Georgia, and went to school in Philly, and then joined the Navy. So I've been kind of around the world, a few places. Yes, military, so I'm a veteran, but also trained and board certified, like my sister there, Dr. Yuli, in family medicine, but working in an urgent care emergency room setting. Get a great chance to work with all these other beautiful ladies. It's a privilege, but also a privilege to be here this evening to be part of this great discussion.
All right. So that's our crew, and we're going to be joined by some amazing guests that we're so excited to bring on later. But even though we're talking about sexual dynamics in the workplace, because we at WDT live in the world of medicine, and all of us, including you out there, live in the world of COVID, unfortunately, we always want to take just a few moments to update you on COVID-19 in our broadcast. So let's go ahead and talk about what's going on, because it's been a heck of a roller coaster year. So where are we now with COVID?
Oops, sorry, mic was muted. But as of today, roughly 165 million cases have been worldwide, and over 3.4 million deaths. My goodness. There's been over 32 million cases in the U.S., and over 580,000 deaths, so almost 600,000 people. My goodness.
Wow. So almost over half a million
Over
people are dead in the United States, huh? Well, we have some new things going on with the virus. So the good news for everyone is that COVID-19 numbers are slowly going down. And that's everything. We're talking about new cases, hospitalizations, and death. Not gone, but at least trickling down. We've known for quite a while that masks reduce the spread, especially when it's combined with social distancing. But let me tell you, that vaccine has been a game changer. And I want to tell you a little bit more about how much of the US has been vaccinated. So, in terms of vaccination, the groups that seem to really be very well vaccinated are people older than 65. It looks like in that population within the United States, as of the most recent CDC statistics, 73% of them have had both of their vaccines, or just one if they had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Of adults in the US population, so that's people older than 18 years of age, as you can see, more than 60% have been at least dosed with the first dose of the vaccine. So we still have a ways to go, but at least we're getting vaccinated. People are getting those shots, and we're continuing to see those numbers go down.
Vaccines are very effective, but you need to wait at least 2 weeks after your last dose to say that you're fully vaccinated and protected. It protects against many of the variant strains. Pfizer vaccine now is available to children 12 and older. And vaccinated individuals are not likely to spread COVID-19, which to me brings me, I think, a lot of comfort, especially because I have people in my home that cannot get the vaccine at this point. So that makes me feel really good about being vaccinated.
Absolutely. It makes me feel great too. You know, that was my biggest fear. Once I got the vaccine, I was like, great, but what about my kids? What about people that can't get the vaccine, like you said? And so recent literature has come out suggesting that even though you're able to get COVID after the vaccine, it's less likely. So it really does protect you from getting it. But if you do get it, you don't get that sick. And not just that, more recently, they've discovered that if you do get it, the levels of virus in your system, because you've had the vaccine, are so low that it makes you less likely to transmit it to others, especially if you're not symptomatic. So that's really good news. And so that's why we're continuing to encourage people to get the vaccine. But a couple things have happened recently. The CDC recently put out a guideline saying that vaccinated Americans who have been fully vaccinated and actually, more than 2 weeks past their last vaccine, no longer have to wear a mask either outdoor, nor do they have to wear it indoor. And so it begs the question, and a lot of people have reached out to me and said, Doc, do I still need to wear a mask? What's the deal here? So I just want to throw it out to the crew. What are your thoughts? Are you guys still wearing a mask or what?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Tell me about it, Morgan. Why are you still wearing a mask?
I'm wearing a mask because we still have people coming in, shortness of breath, full-on COVID symptoms. I'm wearing a mask because regardless of whether you're vaccinated or not, you can still get the virus. It just depends on how severe it is. So please, there's a myth out there that people think once they've been vaccinated twice, they can't get the virus. They can walk around without a mask. Not true. We still have people coming in. They can't breathe. So keep your mask on.
I hear you.
Oh, yeah. The true hot girl summer is COVID-19. And COVID is going to be out here in these streets, okay? Hide your kids, hide your wives, because it's coming. So,
right.
Wear your mask, please, because all these folks out here ain't got no act right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, COVID, though. It's not only just COVID. I'm still wearing my mask because other things exist besides COVID. Like,
That's a good point. That's a good point. So you're talking about like other just respiratory infections and stuff that you just don't want to catch.
Yeah. And we've not seen people as much like flu and all that stuff.
Yes.
We haven't been seeing it. And I know for me, I've been thinking about, am I going to just even change how I do things? In a lot of Asian countries, they wear masks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some of it I know is environmental, with smog and that kind of stuff. But I really, I don't know. I feel like it's changed my mindset a little bit because we haven't seen like regular colds, flu. And I was reading an article where pediatricians, they weren't seeing as many ear infections, things like that. And it was because of distancing, but also transmission through, and wearing masks and preventing it. So.
Absolutely. I hear that. Let me be real with you. I have another reason why I'm wearing a mask. I'm so happy that we have all these vaccinated Americans, all these people who have had their vaccines, and the numbers are going down. I think that the CDC wanted to encourage people to continue to get vaccinated by lifting the mask mandate, by saying, hey, look what you can do. You don't have to wear these masks anymore. And now the problem is, how do we know who's vaccinated and who's not?
Correct.
So now it's kind of an honor system. And yes, there are very many honorable Americans, but there are very many people who are not honorable at all. And a friend of mine was mentioning, listen, people lie to their doctors even about their health care. People lie all the time. Like people come in, how many times have you guys been like, oh, do you smoke? No. You see them smoking in the parking lot. You know what I'm saying? Like,
look, you smell like a
just
whole
not
carton
honest
of
all the
Marlboro.
time, you know, they don't feel comfortable being honest. And there are already people who had an agenda that they were not going to wear masks and they were not going to get the vaccine. So what makes anyone believe that an honor system is going to be enough to protect those vulnerable Americans, for instance, like our kids who can't get vaccinated? So I'm still wearing my mask in the appropriate setting. My children will still wear their mask. I think the CDC's heart was in the right place, but I think it's really challenging because we can't know who's been vaccinated.
And it's premature.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Why do you think it's premature?
The CDC is thinking about making that money. These folks who are out here don't want to. No, seriously, in all seriousness, CDC is thinking about people who don't want to wear the mask, don't want to get the vaccine, but they want to go out and they want to spend their hard-earned cash or what have you. So, okay, fine. If you got vaccinated or you gonna lie like you got vaccinated, you don't have to wear your mask. You can go out and you can go back to normal, and that's what's happening. I mean,
you know, I think that's true that a lot of people want business to boom and things to go back to normal. But I think we always have to remember, listen, if we get another outbreak, then things are going to be shut down again, and that's going to be detrimental. So we need to continue to move in the right direction and really consider that, because we want it to be over, but we got to move in ways that acknowledge that we recognize it's not yet. And so I, for one, will recommend that you still wear your mask in settings that are crowded. I do not wear my mask when I'm indoors with other vaccinated people. That is the truth. I do not. I do, except for when I'm indoors at the hospital, where many of the nurses and doctors are vaccinated. I still wear it because there are many patients, like you said, that still, Morgan, you said they still can't breathe. They have COVID. And so I'm not trying to bring that home to my
But let me ask you this, Doc. Let me ask you this. Are you requiring that people flash their card like a badge, their vaccination card?
How could they? Some people don't even, some people lost theirs. They don't have their card.
Because there are people, there's this herd immunity that everyone's talking about, that people are waiting and waiting and waiting for everyone else to get vaccinated. They're not getting vaccinated, and they're just like waiting on everyone else to do it. So for me, I'm only taking off my mask in front of people who I know firsthand are fully vaccinated.
No, I hear you. I hear you. And that's the same thing. So when I say I will take my mask off with people who are vaccinated indoors, these are people I know for sure. These are not people who are like, you know, strangers. I'm vaccinated. Yeah. I'm gonna need to see some.
Like, yeah, sure.
Personally, because I'm trying to.
I got the Moderna.
Moderna and the Pfizer.
Right.
Okay. Nah, we're not doing it. What do you all think about, and just as a side note, before we launch into our topic, since we're having this coronavirus moment, what about the whole notion of kids being vaccinated? I have only one child that's old enough. He's my older son is 12. The rest are too young. But what do you all think about the vaccine for your kids?
I think it needs to happen. I remember at the very beginning of all of this happening that there was a 3-year-old that I saw who ended up going to Children's and did not do very good. And I remember saying 2 days later, when I followed that chart, I was like, whenever this vaccine is available for my son, who's not even 2 yet, he's going to get this vaccine.
And I know they're working on it for people 2 to 11 right now, but yeah, it's something I've had to think about. Like, you know, I always tell my viewers, even though we're all healthcare professionals, it doesn't mean that we are going to buy into every single thing that comes out in healthcare. So when the vaccine first came out, I had my questions. I wanted to know more about it. I read about it, studied it, and I felt it was a great thing to do. I want to do the same for my kids. It's the same vaccine, but this is, you know, these are kids. And so I want to look and see how it's tolerated and so forth. And it seems like so far the literature is suggesting that it's good in kids. Kids have very few side effects from the vaccine, and it's giving them amazing protection. So 100%, whereas with adults, I think they're saying 95% efficacy for the 2 mRNA vaccines. That's Pfizer and Moderna. I see comments from our viewers. Absolutely, Miss Udi, still wearing your mask. You said, I'm not going to let the mindset of the next person impact my health and livelihood. I know that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other thoughts on the mask, coronavirus?
I look forward to seeing the information that they come out with in pregnant women who've gotten the vaccine. Because timeline wise, I was fully vaccinated and conceived like 5 minutes later. So I would be interested in seeing what kind of information they come out with the women who got pregnant shortly after getting vaccinated, like I did.
Absolutely. So you got pregnant soon after you had it. There are some women who have taken the vaccine in pregnancy. And on our next show, we'll do a coronavirus moment. I'll give a little bit more stats about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and what it looks like when you're talking about vaccination. Because a lot of our women viewers have questions about that. And we always want to provide information. But we're going to move on. I would like to, before we move on, have a word from one of our sponsors. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Yes. Oh, sorry about that. Let's move it up here. So we'd like to give a shout out to Skinworks Day Spa right here in Georgia in Covington. Please check them out. Their number is there. And there's the website too. And you can always also go to When Docs Talks Facebook page for more information about Skinworks. So let's talk a little bit more about why we're here and why we even chose this topic, right? So just so everyone knows, this is about a year since we've been broadcasting to you all. In May of 2020, we had our first episode online. We presented a look through her window, which focused on women and how they were experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic. And we shared stories of teachers, hairstylists, pregnant and new mothers, and of course, women healthcare workers who were braving the pandemic. And today, 1 year later, as many Americans re-enter the workforce in person, we're turning our attention back to women. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, women hold over 50%, just a little over 50% of all the jobs in this country as of December 2019. And while women comprise almost half of the US workforce, integrating different professions, breaking barriers, and advancing in many fields, some things still remain the same. There's still discrepancies in pay. There's still underrepresentation in leadership positions. And there are still work environments in which women are disproportionately exposed to unwanted sexual pressures. From medicine to politics, education to entertainment, there's almost no field where there's no stories where there's no stories existing that there are wildly inappropriate behaviors going on. Okay, so basically no industry is untouched. And it's often involving the unfavorable treatment of a woman, although sometimes it goes in the other direction, which we're going to talk about too. And yet, as women and men interact in the workplace, I think it's inevitable that the occasional workplace romance is going to bloom. And I think it's natural that sometimes people, men and women, are going to be attracted to their colleagues, right? Flirtation or even full-blown workplace romances are going to occur, right? But the question today that we want to ask is, when are the lines crossed? Is it possible to have a work environment with no sexual energy, or at least one where no one acts upon that energy? You know, with the MeToo movement, we've seen sexual misconduct highlighted. We don't want women to be put in a position where they feel their careers are threatened, but we also don't feel that women need to be handled with kid gloves. And we feel firmly that we can determine our own boundaries. As we shatter ceilings, we need to shape boundaries. And that's part of what we'd like to start doing on this show today. So today, we want to talk about our experiences with sexual dynamics in the workplace. And we invite you to join in with your comments and questions about this before we bring on our guests. So, ladies, I want you guys to tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are about this topic. Is it possible that we can have a completely Asexual work environment.
No.
Give me a strong no. That's a hard one. Tell me about it.
No.
Talk to me.
No.
Talk to me. Why?
I mean, I think we're all sexual beings, right? I mean, we're having to learn how to operate professionally with that. I mean, we find people, there are people out there we find attractive. There are people who find us attractive, but how do you tote that line without offending someone, without risking your job? That's the important part. How do you do it?
I agree. I mean, do you think it's a little different in medicine? Because some people say, well, does that really happen in medicine? It's such a serious profession. You guys really have situations where people are trying to flirt with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Davina, your eyes got big. Like, are you serious? Talk to me. What's up? Why the guys? Are you hitting? Look.
Yeah.
What's up?
And then also, I'm sure definitely for the nurses, because that is fetishization of nursing and that kind of stuff. So even that dynamic in itself, I'm sure you get hit on quite a bit.
Even I have a holiday. I have a what is it? Halloween outfit, a nursing Halloween outfit. I mean, exactly. It's a fetish for everyone.
Yes.
But how do me, I don't get too offended because I know it is. It always has been. It just depends on how far the person goes.
Yes.
Right. No, I hear you. But, talking about fetishization of nurses, as we're talking about this topic, I think we have to also talk about gender dynamics in the workplace. And I think it's important to note that a lot of times when I go into a room, even if I introduce myself as a doctor, if I have a tag that says doctor, if I have doctor tattooed on my forehead, I'm still going to be seen as a nurse. Oh, nurse. Thank you so much. When's my doctor coming? So when you mentioned that there's a fetish for nurses, I mean, it still affects the doctors. I mean, people are still reporting with us.
Totally. But I just know it's just, if you come in and say nurse, it's like, whoa, versus, but I know, I get it, you're the doctor, really? And then, okay, but no, I from the standpoint of just culturally and just, once again, the Halloween, there's never a sexy doctor outfit. I don't think
there isn't. I'm just playing. Okay, so tell me, so basically you're saying that all of you have experienced, even in your profession, even in like a healthcare setting where you're working in a capacity of providing care, you've experienced some sort of flirtation or sexual misconduct?
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So let's do a little wave your stethoscope. So I'm gonna read something. If it's happened to you, wave your stethoscope.
I'm ready.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do this.
I've never had a patient try to touch me sexually.
They know better. Oh, really?
Oh, okay. So am I waving when this actually happened?
It actually happened. It's like a game of I never.
Oh,
so
really?
yes,
This
we're
is
gonna wave it.
Wow.
So yes,
I have.
so
I have, yes.
of us all of us have had a patient try and touch you sexually.
Yes.
Okay, why don't you tell me your story, Davida?
I've had several. This happens.
Well, it's just one story.
Well,
Pick one, girl.
Introduce myself to the patient. Hi, my name is Davida. I'm going to be your nurse for this evening. Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. Okay, thanks. Anyway, so as the night goes on, and it's just at first it starts off with just a touch on my arm. Okay, sir. Then he tries to reach for my breast.
Oh, that's some serious boldness. Serious boldness. Are you serious?
Yes.
So what did you do?
I found out very soon that I wasn't that sweet little girl that he kept referring to me as.
Right.
Yeah.
What'd you do?
Can I say what?
Say what you did. I want to know. We probably would have all done the same if it has anything to do with that.
First of all, I slapped his hand. It was like I slapped his hand and I went up to him. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're not about to do that. No, sir. Absolutely not.
So let me ask you a question. When things like this is to everybody. When patients, let's say it's a patient that's being inappropriate with you, flirting with you, or saying things that just make you uncomfortable. When they do that in front of your male colleagues, do you feel like that undermines your authority?
No.
Like, do you think your male colleagues now you're just a dick to your male colleagues?
I think that they just are showing their ignorance about how they interact with a male versus a female. Like, I don't feel undermined. If anything, now you've given me an opportunity to show my ass.
But I feel like, okay, so when I was in med school, there was a patient who was flirting with me so heavily. I was on my ortho rotation, orthopedics, right? And it's a heavily male dominated field.
Yeah.
And I was on that rotation, and all these male residents, right? They're all older than I am, and they're like in a senior position, right? And this patient's going in hard, right? Baby this and this, and I'm like, I'm the student doctor. You know, I'm not a doctor, but I'm here to help take care of you. And I kept saying that, and I felt like embarrassed because even though I can handle myself with a guy flirting with me, I mean, you know, we deal with that. It was in front of essentially my bosses, you know, my supervisors. And I felt like it made them see me not as like that med student, but it made them see me as just like a chick, a girl, you know, somebody who's, you know, ooh, so, and they were laughing. They thought it was so funny. Oh my gosh, he keeps on hitting. And actually the patient gave them a note to give to me with his number. And I was so embarrassed. I remember being so embarrassed because not because the patient was flirting with me, but because he was flirting with me in front of people that I was trying to shine in front of and look professional in front of.
Yes.
And so I thought that was what made it more uncomfortable for me than the flirtation itself.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I'm
I've had a situation where in medical school, and I was with a nephrologist, but anyway, we were talking about something about the South and the patient. We were talking with the patient, and so I said something about, I'm from Georgia, and he was like, "Ooh, you're a Georgia peach, ooh," and doctor, you know, "Ooh, you get to work with this sweet Georgia peach," and the chicken was like, you know, that's not really appropriate. She's a medical student learning to be a physician. And I just remember him standing up for me and just nipped it in the bud, and we moved on. And I was like, you know, okay, great, you know, and it kind of empowered me because it was like I could appreciate the fact that, you know, he saw what could have happened, that kind of stuff. And I have had male attendings where they laugh or they kind of snicker, that kind of stuff. But he really took command of the situation, and I always appreciated that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really important when our male allies and colleagues say something too. You know, it's not that we can't defend ourselves, but it just validates it once again. It lets them know that it's not just us being oversensitive, that they as men also agree that they need to stop acting like
inappropriate.
Inappropriately.
Right.
But ladies, I want to bring on, we're talking about, you know, flirtation and sexual harassment and things like that in the field of medicine. And I want to bring on one of our guests. We have with us, we're so fortunate to be joined by Dr. Barbara Joy Jones Park, who is a dually board certified family medicine physician who's proficient in osteopathic manipulative treatment and a sought after medical expert correspondent on CNN and HLN. Most recently on Headline News, she was their coronavirus expert. Along with practicing medicine, she teaches young resident physicians and enjoys motivational speaking. When she isn't doctoring or appearing on a national TV syndication, she is modeling, playing basketball, or active with her sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She is currently a model bride in the 2021 Georgia Bridal Runway Short, and she plays basketball in a women's league for former college athletes who still enjoy the game. Right now, she lives in Norcross, Georgia, and she recently got married during the pandemic to her husband, Lewis. She also loves to travel. We're so excited to have her join us. Welcome, Barbara Joy.
Hi, Soror.
I think you're on mute.
Got unmuted. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm so happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here. So I know that you were backstage and you must have heard us starting this discussion about what flirtation looks like in medicine. And I wanted you to say just a little bit because you have this amazing resume. And in it, I see things like modeling. I mean, this is a profession that, you know, people are literally looking at you. That's what people are, you know, paying you to do, to advertise their merchandise and so forth. And I wonder what that dynamic is like when you now switch back to your white coat. Tell me a little bit about that.
So when you just said that, it made me think of like back in the day when I used to do music videos when I was in undergrad, and during that time period, you know, like late teens and early 20s. And I used to, at that time period, when you don't really have full confidence and know who you are, you're growing up, to see in that time period that I would say that I did allow, not knowing, just, you know, just being young and ignorant, that people would say things that were very inappropriate, and I would just smile them off. And yes, I would be uncomfortable. But ever since I have come, you know, into my later 20s or now in my 30s, and I know who I am, it's much harder because of the way that I present myself. I don't get tested.
You don't get
really don't. Yeah, I really don't.
So it sounds like you're saying you let a lot of things fly back then. You were just like, oh, that's cute, and you were smiling about it. But now, as you've come into yourself more, you're a little bit less patient or accepting of things like that. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yes, exactly. Like my tolerance is very low. And also I think that I present myself in a way that they would check themselves before they would try it. Type of thing.
I don't know. Some people don't check themselves even when you come off. Like, are you serious? Like, you know, even when you're pretty commanding, I found that people don't check themselves as much as they should. So, but let me ask you all a question. So we're all in medicine. Do you feel that flirtation is okay sometimes in our work environment?
Look.
Talk to me, Davida. You're like,
I don't know. I've had workplace romances. They never end well. But sometimes, you know, I work a lot. I've traveled. I've worked 6 days a week, 7 days sometimes. So I spend the majority of my time at work. The people that I interact most with are at work. My dating field is at work. A lot of the times I feel like people can flirt or kind of come off of as being interested without being offensive. There's always a line. Okay. I think I've been approached in a very disrespectful way, and it ended very badly. And I've been approached in ways that I feel like are respectful, and I can either just decline or, you know, go along with it. I don't think that it's ever appropriate to make anyone feel uncomfortable at work. Do not think that it's a work environment just because you like somebody.
I see. Well, I think you're in good company, because when we did our WDT survey, we asked our viewers and the people who filled out the survey, is flirtation ever okay in a work setting? And keep in mind, this was a survey of both men and women, all professions, although I would say the majority of them were in healthcare. And it seems that most of them either said, no, it was not appropriate, but a lot of people like you, Davida, said that it really depended on the circumstances. You know, it depends on what's going on. And I think that's important to note, because there are some companies that have very strict policies saying, no, it can't happen, it shouldn't happen. Right. So I know, Barbara Joy, I didn't tell you to bring your stethoscope, but I'm going to ask another question. You could just raise your hand. Let's flip the script a little bit and talk about that depends category, right? We're talking about if it's okay. I want to know if you think it's okay if it's somebody who's in a senior position to you. So my question to you all is, I never, and you're going to answer, you're going to raise your stethoscope or your hand if it has happened to you. I never have had a boss or supervisor or someone more senior than me try to flirt with me in a work setting. Is it because you don't have a stethoscope, or you're thinking about that? You look like you're thinking really hard, Barbara Joy.
I've had compliments, but not really, forward. It was more so like, let me just
about that. Like, what makes it compliment versus forward? What's your line? Like, when are you like, okay, that's not a compliment.
The one thing that I can think of is like, wow, you look really cute today, and then just leave it at that. I think it's like a bid for a reaction. And if I were to react, it would go forward, but I didn't react. I didn't answer the bid. I just left it alone. And then it didn't go anywhere.
Gotcha.
So that's what I was talking about. That usually when it's, when we're talking about somebody more senior, it's more so like not respecting my credentials and, not calling me by doctor or things like that. More so that part of it versus sexual. When it comes to sexual, it's mostly my elderly male patients. And if they have cognitive, I usually just give them a
you just let it go. Let it go. I mean, I hear you.
Yes, Thank you. I appreciate that.
Totally get it. I get on the front of not respecting your credentials. I get that. And then, having worked in a VA hospital for almost 8 years, I also get what you're saying. Sonia, did you wave your stethoscope?
I didn't.
I think it must have been Yolanda. Was it you? Tell me about it, Yolanda. What happened?
So while I was in medical school going into residency, I lost a significant amount of weight. I lost about 105 pounds, exercise and diet or whatever. I never went down on my scrub size. So I had one person, I won't say the specialty, but one person make a comment about the weight loss, which innocent enough. And then one time that same person saw me switch out of my scrub top. I had on like a wife beater underneath it and put on another scrub size, same size, too big though. He gonna say, you should show that off more often. And I didn't know what he was talking about at first because I had just taken off my scrub tops. I've been working out. I had like some arm muscles. I'm like, okay, you talking about these guns or what? He was like, no, I'm talking about what God gave you.
He said that?
Yes. And then he said, I pretty much blew him off. And then he was like, well, men are going to look at the thing they find most impressive on a woman. My response back to him was, well, turn around because you've been talking out your ass all month. So that's the most impressive thing for me, that you can form words out of that orifice.
I hope you really did say that. I hope you didn't think it out.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I am not that creative off the top of my head. Sure the hell did.
And you said that he was one of your attendings?
Yes.
Okay, so just for those of you who are not familiar with the medical training system, when you first start, after you finish med school, you're an intern and then a resident, and you have attendings. Those are people who are already licensed, practicing, have been out of medical school for a while. They're supposed to be training you and supervising you, and so that is really inappropriate for him to say that to you because you are his trainee. He's supervising you. Well, let me tell you something. We have some more stories, and I know that this is kind of the medicine's perspective. I want to, at the other side of the break, bring in people who are not in medicine, and they actually have a real interesting perspective because they know about the law. Okay, so we're talking about sexual misconduct. I want to know how it looks like in the legal profession, especially when these ladies really know that they can take you to court. Okay, but we will see our guest and talk more about it on the other side of the break. We'll see you very shortly. Now for a word from our sponsors.
Hi, my name is Kathy Walker. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm the co-founder of TKH2O IV Hydration and Wellness. This company was started after working many years in the emergency room and seeing so many people come in with dehydration related to sports, flu-like symptoms, weight loss surgeries, sickle cell, hangover, and many other conditions that requires the IV fluids. As we started this company, we realized that many Americans not only are dehydrated, but they're also vitamin deficient. I noticed patients were coming in for dehydration, and then they were also vitamin deficient. So we decided to add vitamins to these drips to help people with focus, energy, muscle repair, headaches, and boost immunity. And it also supports with chronic illnesses. TKH2O is here to restore, revive, replenish, and rehydrate. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at TKH2O Drip. To learn more about our services, go to our website, www.tkh2odrip.com. We did not invent IV hydration, but TKH2O made IV hydration better.
Thank you so much for that word. And just to give a shout out again to TKH2O IV Hydration and Wellness. They're on Instagram, as you can see there. There's their number and their website. And once again, just check us out at our When Docs Talk Facebook page. We'll have that information there. So now I am joined by two amazing guests that I want to introduce to you. Well, actually, I was joined by them a second ago. I'm about to have them on screen. Let's start off with Ms. Otto U. Aiko Esquire. She is a career prosecutor that has been trying felony cases for 12 years, including but not limited to human trafficking, crimes against children, and homicide cases. She is a member of different legal organizations and a fierce advocate for mental health awareness in the legal community. When she isn't helping to bring justice to her community, she is spending time with her 2 children and her wonderful husband. Welcome, Oto.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so happy to have you here. And we are also joined by Miss Sahai Henry, Esquire, who is a personal injury attorney here in Georgia. She went to college and law school in New York and was a former prosecutor for alleged cases of child abuse and neglected children. Currently in Atlanta, she specializes in auto and truck accidents, premises liability, pedestrian accidents, and wrongful deaths. She enjoys helping injured people and making them whole, and we are extremely happy to have her here. Welcome, Sahai.
Thank you for having me. Happy to see you all.
Well, I want you guys to weigh in. I don't have gavels for you all. I'm not sure if you have. I know you're not judges, but I want you to weigh in because we've been talking a lot about what flirtation and sexual misconduct look like in the medical field. And, Barbara Joy was telling us about some of her experiences. I want to know what it looks like in the legal world. And does it exist, or are people too scared to even try that, knowing that you can sue the pants off of them?
Ms. Henry, do you want me to go first? I can definitely say it doesn't matter that other attorneys are aware of what the law is. They're still going to commit crimes, right? And they will still sexually harass someone. It is very prevalent in the legal workforce, just like in any other workforce. It just depends on who you are, whether or not in big law firms, you see it a lot more than you do in government. From the friends that I've had who worked in big law firms. I've been working in the government sector for 12 years now. You don't usually see it as much where I'm working, but a lot when you're working closely with law enforcement. And so you'll see it a lot. It's kind of like the good old boys system. They work with a lot of other men, and it's hard for them to switch off when a female does come into play. So you see it a lot more in that aspect.
Okay.
But yes, it does happen a lot.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised. I thought that people might know a little better, or at least be scared. I would be. Sahai, what's your experience?
I agree completely. But I will add to that some of you doctors mentioned this one theme, that it happens more so when you are in training. And for attorneys, that looks like internships during law school, in between law schools. And what happens is you will work for a law firm, a large law firm, or in the government, but you'll be a young, very easily intimidated, and you're not aware of, the law yet because you're still learning. And you're just not fully aware of yourself as a woman. And so it happens more frequently as an intern, is what I find. And it is more, I find that it's usually a lot older colleagues that will do it. And I find that it's even more aggressive when it's younger women. Because as a lot of us have said here today, we are more empowered when we become professionals. We know how to carry ourselves with an air where we will not tolerate certain things. And if we're now also financially stable, a lot of us in these professions, but I find that women who are probably more financially vulnerable will also be more susceptible. So I see that there are groups that are more vulnerable to it than others.
Absolutely.
I agree. And it's funny because I think Barbara Joy was saying something similar, how it, with older people, you see it a lot. And it's so funny because do you think it's because the culture has shifted? And now there's different expectations. Things that were okay way back when are not okay anymore. And maybe some people haven't gotten the memo. What do you all think? Like, why are we seeing with older people? You would expect that older people would know better, but maybe it's just, that's kind of how it was, think about Mad Men. If any of you watch that show, it's just good old boys love. And
I think that older people, men and women, lose a lot of, I don't know the right word. It's not politically correctness, but they become a little freer right? And they feel a little more empowered, depending on the field even. So you think that they would be more well behaved in law or medicine, but it's a very powerful position to hold. And so you kind of mix that power with your lack of inhibitions, and they become more predatory, is what I would think.
Okay. I want to switch gears and talk a little. Oh, actually, we had a question from one of our viewers, and I'd like one of you to jump in. Any of us, our guest, our host. But Wanja M wants to know what the appropriate steps to take to escalate sexual harassment that is persistent and creating a hostile work environment. And I kind of want to throw that to you, Davida, because I know you have a really interesting story and you have some tales about what you did. So it might answer the question.
So I was working, he didn't work at the hospital I was working in, but he was with EMS. And I had a professional relationship with him before because I had done some outreach programs with him before. It was never inappropriate. I don't know what came over this man. He's much older than my parents. So
wow. And you said EMS, just for our viewers that don't know, that's emergency medical services. It's like a paramedic, right?
Yes, he was a paramedic. And he approached me one day when he transported a patient, a critical patient. So I'm charting. A lot of stuff is going on in this room, and he decides to have a conversation where he invited me to a swingers lounge. He wanted to
swingers lounge.
Swingers lounge.
Coco gonna break his hip at the swingers lounge.
He's gonna have a heart attack. So he kept asking me like what type of alcohol I drank, and all this is going on. I am appalled that he decided to have this conversation with me, to have the conversation at that point in time. Not only did he leave the room, not only he left the room because he saw that I was ignoring him. He came back after we finished with the patient and wanted to continue the conversation. And we were not friends on any type of social media. He found me on Facebook, decided to send me these messages and links to the club and everything. I cut all ties. I went to HR. I sent him all the information that he sent me, the text messages that he sent me. Like I said, we had a professional relationship before. So we communicated when it was regarding the outreach program, going to do those types of things. Once HR reached out, they said, okay, what do you want us to do? One, I wanted to be on record that he did these things. And after HR had a conversation with him, he said, yes, he agreed. He admitted that he did all of these things. He didn't know that you made him feel uncomfortable. I told him that he was making me feel uncomfortable. So we're not going to say that he didn't know. Of course, everybody wants to blame, oh, well, she was receptive. No, it's not my fault. I told you. And I told him at the time I was in a relationship. Like, all of that was just disregarded. But anyway, so I didn't want him to get fired. I just wanted to be, it was on record that it happened. He was instructed not to have any type of communication with me. Anytime we were at work and he was bringing a patient, he would go the other way. I appreciated that. I never had any type of interaction with him after that. But apparently, some other stuff came up. So it was on record that at this point, it's becoming a habit.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened after that because I stopped working at the job, but I heard that there were
happened to somebody else with him. Yeah. So I think that brings up an interesting point, an important point. You know, sometimes, and we're going to find out later because I'm going to show you some of the results of the poll and also show you some statistics on sexual misconduct and harassment. A lot of times people don't report and they're like, it's just easier to ignore it. But in your case, what you're demonstrating is a situation where it was creating a very uncomfortable environment. And if you didn't have that on record, had you not reported when this happened again, they might not have seen that this is a pattern, you know. But I want to switch gears a little bit, ladies. I want to ask you a little bit more about MeToo, okay? Because we're talking a lot about, you know, flirtation and what's important and so forth. And we know that there are people who are predators, but we know that there are people who are kind of harmlessly flirting. So I want to know from you all, do you all feel that the MeToo movement has been helpful in highlighting things, or do you feel that it's sometimes created a little bit of a strain in relationships between men and women in the workplace? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. It's not to say that, you know, Me Too is a bad thing, but do you feel that sometimes men have been expressing that they feel that they've been painted in a negative light? And do you also feel like they're getting a bad rap?
I do feel like some guys who are probably doing what they think is harmless flirting or maybe even being complimentary to a woman are being now drug across the coals and crucified. Sometimes. Sometimes it is inappropriateness that would have otherwise not been reported because of their position. Someone mentioned that people who are in higher positions of power within the company, they feel like they have a little bit of a free range to be a
Yes.
little bit more inappropriate. And those men maybe otherwise would not get reported. But I do not feel that every person who flirts deserves to be crucified.
I would agree with that.
Sorry, go ahead, Oto.
I think it takes a lot of the grace out of natural behavior. I think that people act in a certain way because that's just how behavior is. And I think that the Me Too movement kind of narrowed and completely eliminated giving grace to people who make honest mistakes, right? When there is some flirtation, when there is an inappropriate comment, because we're all human, right? You can't think of a time that we probably have said things that we probably shouldn't have said. And we've been given that grace and that patience to rectify and correct it. And I think with the Me Too movement, there is no more grace for a man to make an inappropriate mistake. However, on the other hand, I do think that it has brought awareness to the forefront.
Yes.
I've heard from judges who have retired that there were times where they were harassed and they did nothing about it because they didn't feel like they could say something. Where now women are more emboldened and we know that there is an avenue to say something. So it depends on the situation and who the person is.
Yeah. Lyndon is bringing up a good point. That's an awesome point, Otto. One of our viewers, Lyndon, is saying there are women who flirt with and hit on men. Which is definitely true. And I think, Barbara Joy, you and I had a conversation about, how about flirtation and how it's not always just one-sided, like men flirting with women and going after women. Can you say a little bit about your thoughts on that and your experience in the work environment? Have you seen it two ways or both ways?
So I definitely have. I would say that naturally, even for me being more charismatic, that I'm naturally flirty, not even on purpose. Another thing that layers onto that is that I'm actually a DO, not an MD. So in my training, I get 400 extra hours of manual manipulation. So I'm really touchy. Like when I'm talking to friends, I laugh, I touch them. Like when I'm around Dr. Yuli, I'm hugging her. I'm constantly, and I'm one of those friends who will like laugh on you, hold your hand. When I'm talking to my patients, I put my hands on men and women's thighs. And so when the Me Too movement came, I was thinking to myself, could I get in trouble because I'm touching people? And so I had to rethink that as well.
That's really an interesting perspective because I never thought about whether anything that I may do as a provider, just in my line of work, having to touch people and examine very sensitive parts of their body, if I would ever be considered inappropriate. Have you all ever been in a situation where you were worried that you might be perceived as inappropriate at your job with clients?
I have more so when I was in the Navy, especially being a lot of time I was the only female in the clinic. And then I was, when I was in Guantanamo Bay, I was the only one that was doing vasectomies. So
vasectomies.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I had to do their, genital exams. And so, and sometimes they would get erections and not on purpose. It was just naturally.
Natural. Yeah.
But nonetheless, they would feel awkward, that kind of stuff. But I always had, because I didn't want anything to look inappropriate. I had to always make sure that I had one of my corpsmen, a male corpsman, in the room with me, when I was doing their initial exams, in order to make sure that there wasn't any perception of impropriety or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I know I'll be real quick. I know when I used to do OB, even I would make sure I would tell them every single thing I was doing while I was delivering their baby, checking their cervix. Why am I checking their cervix? I know I was just here an hour ago, but your baby's acting a fool. So I need to check and make sure everything is okay. and I say that in jest, but like I'm like everything. Even now, like when I examine patients, I tell them every single thing I'm doing with somebody else of the patient's sex in the room.
And why you're doing it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
That's, you actually made something come to mind for me. We keep talking about men, women, but it's, what about people who are same-sex attraction? We assume that it's always going to be that a woman would always feel comfortable with us doing something to them. Or we assume that it's only males that would flirt with us or be aggressive towards us. Has anyone experienced something different, like from a same sex, and had to navigate what that looked like? Yes, Sonia.
Yeah.
I see you shaking. Okay. Otto, tell me about that.
In the Navy.
Okay. So we have two people. Sonia, tell me, and then Otto, tell me. What did
No,
that
I
look
was just
like?
saying when I was in the Navy, I would get, once again, just like with the male patients, I would get female patients also that would make suggestions, hit on me, and that kind of stuff, and I would have to, redirect them.
Did you feel less threatened?
Well, from the standpoint, when I was in the Navy, it was a little different anyway because of the power dynamic. I was normally, I outranked everybody.
That's right.
So from the standpoint of, most of the people that I had as patients, they were enlisted. I was an officer. So even, that's cute. Thank you. Move on. So it was just such, the power dynamic was so different that I didn't take it seriously anyway. You just go, okay, thank you, keep moving, or that's not going to happen.
That's right.
We would just laugh it off because really, in reality, this isn't going to happen
ever, right? So tell me about your experience. Tell me what happened.
It's happened with the police department, working closely with our law enforcement. Sometimes you'll have a detective or a beat officer who is a lesbian female, and they will flirt with you and they will make comments. And I can say honestly that I never took offense to it. And I do perceive it differently when it is a woman. I have to admit, I'm a little flattered by it. I say, dang, if I can get a woman to take a look at me,
yeah.
I'm like, if I can have both genders or whatever gender you want to associate with, take a look at me and want to flirt with me, then I'm doing okay over here. So I never took any offense to it, like I would with a male officer or a male law enforcement officer. There have been officers that have said inappropriate comments, and I have not taken it well, and I don't take it lightly. It happens a lot, and I say that it happened a lot when I was pregnant. So I had a child about a year ago, and I remember telling my husband that officers or sheriff's deputies would come up to me and they'd say, "How many babies you got in there? 2 babies?" Or, "Oh, you got my baby in there?" Or, would make inappropriate comments. Absolutely, all the time. And you think about it and you go, why do I have to be subjected to this? Can I not just come into work waddling already tired, I got to sleep on my side, and I'm getting these comments? Like, why can't it just be about the job? Right? Why does it have to be about your looks or how you're looking? And what makes you feel that it's okay to say those kind of comments to me? And there was a female deputy that I would walk by all the time. And as I kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, she kept saying, "Are 2 babies in there?" "No, just 1. "Are you sure you need 2? "It's just 1. At some point, I said, "Are there 2 babies in there?" And I had to check her.
No, you didn't.
I sure did.
Girl, you asked that lady if she had 2 babies in her belly.
You do not keep disrespecting a woman that's 8 months pregnant. You're gonna give what you. So I asked her, "Were there 2 babies in there?" And she said, "I'm not pregnant." I said, "Oh." And then we just kept walking. And that was the last time we ever had that conversation. I see her all the time, and it's just, it's inappropriate. So it took a while for it to become harassment, because harassment legally is whether or not it's prevalent and persistent. Yes. So an offhanded comment there, an offhanded comment here, that's not something that's going to rise to the level of harassment. But if it's persistent, if it's every day that you're coming in, then that's when it can become a problem. And that's sometimes what you're seeing, where it becomes something where someone gets sued, or you're going to HR and they're having to document it.
Okay. Have you all seen women in your work environments who are actually flirting with men and pursuing men?
Absolutely. Aggressively?
Absolutely. With a plan and aggressively.
You said what, and aggressively?
With a plan
With a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Do you think that we perceive that differently as a society? Like, do you think that when, because if you told me that there are men in your workplace that are pursuing women actively, I think people would be very up in arms. They'd be alarmed that that's not right, that's not fair. But almost all of you nodded your head that you know women in your environments that are actively pursuing men, and I don't know if society looks at it with such disdain. I don't know if it's such a bad thing when women do it, unfortunately. And is that double standard fair? Do you think that it's looked at differently?
I don't think it's off-putting. It's not off-putting to people.
My husband's super handsome, and he's a pharmaceutical rep. So when he goes in, he'll have front, back office, nurses, MDs, DOs, basically be like, "Oh, so you brought me chocolate today." You know, so
as in him,
he's the chocolate.
He's the chocolate.
As in him.
Lord have mercy. You can't be serious.
To all the people that got diabetes, they don't need it.
Right. So usually it's women who are postmenopausal, and I'll be like, "Babe, just give her a hug. Just like, just wrap her up in your big arms and just put her in your bosom and just hug her and be like, thank you." But the chocolate's
her day.
And I think that's cute. And I think all of us are smiling. We think it's cute. But think about if it was reversed, right? What if an older man was flirting with you and your husband's like, just give him a hug? We'd all be like, say, what?
You come give him a hug. How about that?
So we have to admit that there are double standards, right? There are double standards. And another thing I want us to admit, and I want our viewers to know that we are going to have the men on for part 2 of this segment, okay? So we are going to, on Sunday, May 30th, don't miss it, we're going to have their perspective on what how this plays out, because it's one thing for us to give our viewpoint. I'd love for them to share theirs, but we're talking about how sometimes women are the aggressors. I want to also ask you, are we sometimes guilty of not being clear, sending mixed messages in the workplace? I'm talking about. And keep in mind, I want to underscore this to all our viewers: no means no, and that's a very clear message. And we're not saying that women have not said that. But I want to know if we are not owning our own mixed messages, because I know that we as women, we're socialized to be nice, right? Oh, we want to be the nice girl. From the time we're little, we want to be nice. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. And I remember a male friend of mine in college was talking about, this guy I was just not interested in, not feeling him, not any kind of way. And he kept, asking me out. And I thought I was being so clear, like by saying, no, I'd make up excuses, but I would never say, no, I'm not just that interested, because I was trying to be nice. And my male friend's like, you're not being nice at all. You're actually not being nice at all. You just need to say, I'm not interested, and be clear. And so using that story, my question to you ladies are, do we need to own that sometimes we're not as clear in a work environment? We just kind of smile it off about what we want. Talk to me.
I feel like I've been very clear a lot of times. I would say no. Either I say, no, thank you, that's flattering, but I'm in a relationship. Oh, no, thank you, I'm good. And it's still persistent. At that point, I go from being accepting that you're being flirtatious to now I have to be disrespectful in order for you to get what I'm talking about, because you didn't get it the first time when I said respectfully.
I've actually seen where there is a couple times in the last couple of years, I've seen a woman who, for whatever reason, her marriage or whatever wasn't really working well and she wasn't getting attention. So then would receive it not because she wanted to be with that person or like them, but because they were fulfilling some sort of emptiness. And then when things started going well with the significant other, all of a sudden this person is doing something wrong just because that deficit wasn't there. So he didn't switch what he was doing, but she switched what happened to her. And so I do think sometimes women can send mixed signals for sure.
Right. And sometimes that can even go even deeper, where there is a consensual relationship, maybe even with a married person. And when that married man may not leave their wife, then the woman now will say it's unwanted, and that this relationship is now being used as some kind of condition to the employment and change it into an actionable a sexual harassment situation.
Yeah.
Right.
I just think about Bill Gates whenever you guys, because that's been in the news.
Tell me
about.
what's going on? I mean, I
So
know about the divorce, but what's
there have
going
been
on?
some allegations now that's coming out that he had inappropriate relationships while married with several employees at Microsoft. And now there was a new allegation that one of the employees said that it was harassment. And apparently the board was aware. And my understanding is that when the board was aware, there was, if you guys remember a couple of years ago, he stepped down from being on the board of Microsoft. And he said that he wanted to have more time for his philanthropic, things that he was really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
But now the board is saying, no, it's because we knew about this. We heard some investigations and we didn't want when it came out for people to know that he was still on the board. So it's interesting, right? Because now it's coming out that he's getting a divorce. And nobody heard anything about it when they were still married.
Right.
So I don't know. It's interesting. That's what I can
Money
say.
and power makes everybody look good.
Girl.
How is he?
Because Bill Gates is not the one.
And I'm like, wow, what money can do.
Right.
Wow.
I didn't
but
realize
listen,
money get women
I want to
eyeballs.
see something though. I don't want to get things twisted though. I don't want it to look as if there are women who are now, because it sounds like we're saying, oh, women lie, women also are their aggressors. We're not saying that. We understand that there is a pervasive culture of sexual harassment that happens in all industries, that women are targeted. They're often left with no recourse. They don't often have the ability to report it. We are just also bringing to light that in some instances, there are cases where the lines are a little bit less clear, a little bit more blurry, where there might have been something mutual that went bad. And now there's retaliation, and the retaliation looks like saying sexual harassment. Now, I don't think that this is the norm. I think that that's few and far between. And I think that we need to be very hypervigilant and very aware of what's going on and correct the things that MeToo, for instance, is trying to bring to light. But I don't want us to put our heads in the sand and be ignorant to the fact that that too is also happening. Yeah. And as a mother of boys, okay, I want my boys to live in a society where things are fair, where they know at least if a message is sent that it's a no, that they can respect that. And that if they behave honorably and they behave respectfully and they listen to know, that they'll be okay.
Yeah.
So we don't want to start a culture where, people are able to just say, oh, abuse when things don't go right. Okay, I want to show you guys something. Tell me what you think about this. True or false?
True.
Oh my God.
Because this, ladies, is another thing that we get accused by. I've talked to many men and even some women, and they say, listen, this is not fair, because it's like, while there are clear cases of harassment that nobody would dispute, it's sometimes perceived differently if it comes from someone different. What do you guys think? Do you think that guys who are more attractive, or I guess in this case more wealthy, looking at Bill Gates's case, are given more leeway when it comes to flirtation in the workplace?
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? It's a very subjective thing. Who I may find attractive, Dr. Barbara Joy may not find attractive, or Davida may not find attractive. So it is very subjective. So when you're talking about harassment, it's the perception. Am I perceiving it as harassment? If I don't perceive it as harassment, then it ain't harassment. So it's a very subjective thing. The same person can come up to me and can come up to Miss Henry, say the exact same thing, but if she don't find that person attractive, it may be harassment at her. And I'm like, oh girl, he just playing, he fine. So it
But is that fair though? Is that fair? Is that not, look at my brother on the right hand side there. Is that confusing him?
Everybody may not find their brother on the left side.
Said the dress looks sexy, so he tried to shoot his shot, talked about the dress looks sexy, and it didn't go well. It went left. Is that fair?
Some people may find the bigger brother to be attractive. You're just assuming that some people don't like a little extra to hold on to. I can't tell what people do like or do not like.
My point is this. You're right, but my point is it confusing when, for one, the same thing from a different person becomes a different experience and is reported as differently? Barbara Joy, you're nodding your head, yeah?
Well, I agree. I just agree with that because I know that throughout my training and even now I get away with a lot of stuff just because like smiling or being charismatic. So I know from the other side, it's the same thing. I know Yeah. So I'll say yes. It's contingent on like power, finances, looks. It's just the truth.
Okay.
No, seriously.
So then I think what's important is that we all need to establish what our lines are in the sand and establish what that looks like and be very firm about it. I want to kind of go across to everybody. Tell me, Dr. Yuli, what's your line in the sand? When does it go from, oh, that's cute, flirtation, to not today?
Most people know that I am a very happily married woman. Yeah. So if you wouldn't say this to your grandma, don't say it to Yolanda, because I am not going to respond to you in the way that you are dreaming of.
And is that for everybody? Like whether it's a little old man who's just trying to be a little flirtatious, everybody.
Papa can get these. He can get these hands too. He can.
Papa. He said Papa can get these hands. Oh my God.
Smoke. He don't want the smoke.
No, Papa want all the smoke. He wants his Polydent smoke flavor. That's what he wants.
Sonia, talk to me about your line. What's your line?
I guess once I've said no, I mean, that's it. I mean, there's no more discussion. There's no convincing, that kind of stuff. That once again, and I think we've commented on this, you know, when I was younger, you know, I maybe kind of him and hawed and I kind of let it fly. But as I've gotten older, I just don't have time for that. You know, I don't want you to back off, you know, and then also from the standpoint of, you know, like if you're coming at me, but then don't touch me.
Oh, okay. So physical contact, that's a no.
Yeah, no, don't touch me, because then that's it. So yeah, that's my line too. Don't touch me.
I hear you. I like that. Don't touch me. Davita, what about you?
I agree. Do not touch me. That makes me feel very uncomfortable. I'm kind of like Dr. Barbara Joy. Like, I'm very affectionate with my friends, my family. But if I do not know you, or I've made it very clear that I do not want you to touch me, it makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I'll retaliate. So don't do that. I think that, you know, sometimes little pop-up, it's just an innocent compliment. Now, once you start being very persistent, and every time I come in your room and you're trying to, I need to massage this kink I got in my upper thigh, I'm gonna need you to calm down.
Yes. Or the patient that for some reason, every time you go in the room, he's naked, and he came in there with ear pain. Mm-hmm. You know, that's his chief complaint. And every time, like, you just come in the room, he's straight naked, and you're like, what? Why?
I swear to God, I had that happen to me about 2 months ago. Swear to God, I did.
I know you probably did, because there was a patient I have in mind. We both work in the same setting. The nurses kept telling me every time I'd walk in the room, he'd be naked. He's there for something that has no reason to be naked. And then I say, sir, it's okay. Put this gown on, but I don't think we actually need to check those places. Come back in naked. Nurse had to come out and tell me, Doc, he's still naked. He won't put on his clothes. Lord have mercy. Anyway, I hear you, Davita. Yes. Talk to me, Otto. What is your line?
For me, it's touching. Don't touch me. Mm-hmm. Vulgarity about my body. Oh. And don't say anything about my spouse. Mm-hmm. So I have had an experience where a supervisor did not like my strong personality, and they made a comment about my spouse and crossed the line. Wow. Basically alluded to the fact that I basically emasculated my husband. And made a comment about it, and that was the end of it for me. So you don't come for my spouse, my husband. You don't do anything vulgar about my body, boobs, breasts, vagina, none of that. And you don't touch me. Most of these stuff, older stuff, I've had older men, you know, say, you know, if my mama would have let me date black women, I hope it would have been someone like you. Okay, thank you. I don't know why. This is a fantasy. Yes, I've had supervisors say things like, don't forget to wear that skirt suit in your next trial, you know, and you just go, okay, I was anyway, but thanks for telling me that. Creepy. Yeah. Okay, so
I hear you. Just so hi, what about you? What is your line? What's that limit? What's that? Do not pass go. Do not collect 100. Full stop.
Well, I have had my own practice for a long time, so I haven't worked in an institutional environment for some time. So for me, when I interact with other associates, other lawyers, it's just always fun and playful, and I we banter a lot. So for me, I have a very wide range of just fun and laughing and joking. They don't feel as constrained as in an institution, but definitely touching and definitely saying things that go beyond what you want to do. To me, that is just too much. And if it's persistent and it just becomes hostile and it's something where you feel it, you can feel that you're being aggravated all the time.
Yeah.
And they can tell you're uncomfortable. There are social norms. They know you can see the change. You start to feel hot and uncomfortable, and it's just hostile at that point, and it's unwanted. But when someone is laughing and you're talking together and you're having a good time, I mean, I think it's, if there are people who do not understand those social norms, they deviate and they go further and further, and you have to put a stop to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Barbara Joy, what are your thoughts? When is it over for you? When is it a wrap? Line crossed?
The same as everybody else. Do not physically touch me without my consent. Period. And that's it.
Okay, cool. For me, definitely the touching, but I also don't like when you just don't stop. So no means no is a very important thing to me. So even if you don't, also if you do things in a way that disrespects me, undermines my authority, or frankly just embarrasses the hell out of me. Like I was telling you the story with my medical school situation, leering at you, like even if they don't touch, if they're staring at your breast, staring at, looking at you and making comments like Oto said, about your body, not gonna fly. That's my line. When it comes to colleagues, nice things like, oh, you look nice today. That's cool. You look sexy today, or talking about sex, or ooh, look at how your blank looks in that's crossing the line to me. So I guess vulgarity would be my line too. I want to share with you what some of our viewers said about all this, because we've been talking about how we feel and so forth. I want to let you know some results from the poll. We already talked about our viewers' thoughts on flirtation. We asked our viewers if they would feel uncomfortable if somebody in a more senior position at work flirted with them, and the vast majority said yes. If it's their superior, if their supervisor, they don't feel comfortable with sexual attention from them. Now we ask our viewers if they would feel comfortable if someone in a less senior position at work flirted. And funny enough, the answer was still yes. And I guess that speaks to the fact that really people don't want to be flirted with at work for the most part. We asked about workplace romances because some of you said, sometimes things are going to happen. It's natural. We asked what our viewers thought about that. We asked, do you think that workplace romances should be prohibited? True or false that they should be? And most people said false, that they should not be prohibited. But the funny side about that is, most of our viewers and the people who fill the survey said, okay, it's not a good idea to prohibit workplace romances because a lot of a lot of companies will have that policy where you're not allowed to date. So they don't think that that's good to have a policy prohibiting it. But when we ask them, do workplace romances threaten the work environment?
Yeah.
Most of them thought that it did. So I thought that was interesting. On one level, they're like, no, don't prohibit them, but they acknowledge that they're bad for work, So, it's kind of...
They want to hook up, but when it goes bad, it just goes bad.
It just goes bad. Absolutely. MeToo got a lot of attention, so we asked questions about that. We said, do people feel that the MeToo movement has been helpful with highlighting and fighting against sexual harassment? True or false? And most people resoundingly said true, that they thought that it was helpful. When we asked our viewers if it painted men in a negative light unfairly, true or false, most of them said false. Most of them did not think that the movement was making men look bad or unfairly painting them in a negative light. When we asked them, is it causing strain or tension between men and women in the workplace, the movement, and all this focus on all this bad behavior that's happening in professional environments? They said false. They don't think it's causing any strain. And we're going to talk more about the men and how they feel about it on our next episode. But I wanted to know from our viewers if they had been sexually harassed. And I would say it was about almost an equal split, with a slight majority saying that yes, they had been sexually harassed. And when we asked who sexually harassed them, what I found is that by and large, if you take out all the people who haven't been harassed, the most people were harassed either by a colleague who's their peer, or a client, or a patient, or a patron. So either somebody that's working with them and who's their peer, or somebody that basically brings their company that they're working for the business, right? Either the patient or the client, which is a really interesting dichotomy, right? Because you want patients or clients are always first, right? It's patient satisfaction, client satisfaction. But what happens when you feel like you're not being treated in a way that is respectful? Now, I asked about the types of harassment, because Otto, you did a wonderful job about defining what harassment is. And there are different types of harassment. So when we asked, and this is hard to see, so I'm just going to underscore the really important points. We asked about things like unwanted touching, or sexual assault, or rape, verbal remarks. It seems like the vast majority of them had verbal remarks of a sexual nature directed towards them that made them feel uncomfortable, followed by lustful staring, and then things like gestures of a sexual nature, or persistent and unwanted attention. And when we say gestures of a sexual nature, there have been patients that we have had, I'm just going to say that I've had, who myself and the nurses, we had to call security because they were, frankly, and I'm not even kidding, masturbating in the emergency department.
Yeah.
And you're shaking your head because you know this. I mean, this, and we worked in the same ER, but we're talking about different people. I just want to underscore that, because that's how often this happens. Literally in the room, you're coming in for care in an emergency setting and you're masturbating. It really has to stop. And this is not somebody who's mentally ill either. Well,
right.
Maybe they are.
A little bit.
A little bit. The vast majority of people who were harassed said that they kept quiet. Okay, they kept quiet. That was the number one answer. They just didn't really say anything about it. And when they were asked why, the vast majority of them, they had several different reasons, but they thought that it was just easier to ignore it. Okay, that's that orange line that you see there, just easier to ignore.
Yeah.
So as we're defining these boundaries, and as things are happening, most of us here have said, we feel like we've come into our own, we know how to handle it. And if we feel like it goes overboard, like Davida did in that instance, she reported it. But I just want you to know that if you look at the American population, up to 69% of women in the workforce have been sexually harassed in a professional setting. And 72%, the vast majority, okay, almost 3/4, do not report it. And I think that that's really important for us to decide why, because as we leave this podcast, as we're about to leave, we need to determine what kind of messages we're sending when we kind of just let it fly.
Right.
Is it because it's just easier? Is it setting up a bad precedence for people who are coming after us? Like some of those women that we talked about in the beginning of their training who aren't established. What are some last thoughts on that?
I had a thought. Otto, you look very petite. I'm 5'11". I'm very aggressive, and I'm an alpha woman. I played basketball in college. I take up more space. So who's petite here? I want to see if, like Davida and Otto, if y'all are super petite and that's why y'all are getting harassed more, because who's harassing you is physically bigger than you.
So let me say, Otto, I know personally,
Dr. Barbara Joy, but I'm
is not petite.
so happy you said that. Well, the weight that I'm trying to lose. So if I look petite, then good. But I'm not. I'm 5'7".
She's 5'7".
A lot of pounds.
Well,
So I'm pretty tall.
I'm
Yeah.
5'2" and 125 pounds.
Yes.
And I still find that it mostly happened at a younger age.
I would agree with that. Most of the experiences that I had were when I was an intern and when I was a newer attorney. Older, established attorneys who were training me would say things like, prepping for trial, make sure that you turn a certain way so the jurors can see your butt.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. That attorney is still working, and absolutely, they don't work with me anymore, but absolutely. Comments were made like that, and I didn't say anything. I went, you know, I just moved on. I didn't say anything about it. And I don't know if that comment would be made to me now.
Yeah.
But I think that people perceive or they believe, and it's true that if they say it to a younger intern, that they're going to think it's funny or cute from an older man, and they won't say anything. And I never did. And also, it wasn't. I didn't consider it to be harassment. It was a off comment that was absolutely inappropriate. Should have never been said. But it wasn't something that I perceived was that person harassing me, if that makes sense. And so if that study from the EEOC that you put up is something that's prevalent, then that's different. But if they're one-off comments, then I don't see many people doing anything outside of just ignoring it. Or another supervisor telling me, this is a completely different one, make sure you wear your skirt suits. I like it when you wear those skirt suits. Make sure you wear those skirt suits next week for trial. You know, okay. And we had a nickname for that particular supervisor. We called him Creepy Carl. So like
Creepy Carl.
Yes,
Creepy Carl. He likes the legs. But you know what? I hear what you're saying. You're saying if it's not persistent, if it's not harassment, then we just let it go. But then are we also not helping to teach some of these people better? Like, it's possible that some of these people go their whole lives and think that that's appropriate because they're never called out on it.
Right. Yeah, and because I think the one thing is we probably need to teach younger women how to be stronger or how to obtain this level of confidence that we have, because it really scarred me in many, many situations when it did happen, and I did not know how to react. And some of it reached to the level of touching and grabbing, and I still didn't say anything. And I just think the young women have it very hard.
I would agree.
Right. Well, to the young women, I want to say it's okay to say no. No means no. If it's a supervisor, just let them know in the most polite way you're not interested. If you're scared that being not that polite will be a detriment to your career, Yolanda put it in ways that I would probably more likely to say or want to say it. But really find your voice and know that it's okay. And you're in an era where you're very well supported, right? People know this is the thing. We have allies who are men. It's not like men are all the aggressors and they don't agree. It's us against them. A lot of men will probably fight harder for you than even some other women. They're like, no, that's not cool. And they're allies and they're cool. And I want that to be very well stated. Any last thoughts, ladies? Because we're about to close this show. I really have enjoyed talking with you all about this. I mean, this is a really important issue. It's something that a lot of viewers and friends and family have told me that they've been thinking about and they wanted to talk about. And as people come out from behind the computer screen, having been so behind there because of COVID, and they rejoined the workforce in person, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about these sexual dynamics in the workplace now that we haven't been seeing each other in person and had the opportunity to talk to each other. Any last words?
Last words. Don't be so nice that you lose the power in your voice.
There we go.
I heard that. I've seen that quote. So
love it.
Yeah, don't confuse being nice and respectful with taking anything, because you should not be uncomfortable in the place that you work to provide your family its livelihood.
That's right. Okay. I'm going to say to men, we love you. You know, this is not a male bashing type episode. We love working with men. Thank you for being supporters in many cases, but sometimes turn it down. If you wouldn't say it in front of your mom or your grandma, somebody said it's probably not appropriate. If somebody says no, or even if she gives you an excuse like, oh, I'm really busy, and then it probably means she's not interested. Go with it. Go with it. And definitely don't touch. And, somebody who's taking care of you in the healthcare setting or even in the legal profession, any profession, respect her position. She probably earned those letters, that position, worked very hard to be able to provide you with a skill. Don't minimize it by minimizing her to whatever body part fascinates you the most, please.
Talking to you, Paw Paw.
See those hands, Dr. Yuli.
I'm never gonna forget that. Papa can get these hands too.
Yes, Papa can get these hands, says Yolanda. Well, I want to thank our guests, Dr. Barbara Joy, Sahai, Ocho. You guys have been amazing. Thank you for your perspectives. I had so much fun talking with you, and we all did. I want everyone to join us on May 30th. That's a Sunday, a little different, not a Friday. And it's going to be a little later, 9 p.m. We're going to have our men join in on this discussion. We're going to give you the flip side of it and talk about some really interesting stories of things that have happened in the workplace. But until then, be well. Continue to protect yourselves. We talked about coronavirus. It's still out there. So make sure you're safe. Get vaccinated if you haven't. If you have any questions, please reach us at whendocstalk@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you with our questions. And as always, be good to each other. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.